So this is Baruch here. We always have like a sideways angle on the just the way that the space on my desk. I made it work. I could change it, but we just learned Parshas Yisro, and today we're going to go to Parshas Mishpatim. All I got to do is find it. Here it is. We are in the Matok Midvash. This is the Zohar and the Parsha. I'd like to see more people learning the Zohar because the Zohar is really key. But we also learned the Sefer Tzniuta, which is a very, very deep Zohar. Let's come over here. This is Parshas Mishpatim. Here's my pencil. The Zohar is going to start like this. We'll read it together with the Matok Midvash. It says, Pasuk Rebbe Shemba V'Amar. He said, Masha Kazav Eloh HaMishpatim. So these are the first words of our Parsha. Asher Tasin Levenechem, that should place before you. Targum, to the Targum, the way it translates. Vilin Dinaya the Tsader Kodemechon. So these are the dinim that you should organize in your present, or before you. In other words, as you go forward, you should have these dinim in mind. Vedocha dinim shetesader levenechem. Lomar, so it means to say like this, a completely different understanding than you may have had. This is the Sod. Ilun inin sidurim de Gilgulo. These are the orders of the Gilgul. What Gilgul are we talking about? Gilgul in English usually translates as, well, of course it is like a cycle, but it really refers to reincarnation, the recycling of the soul. Elohim Hasadarim Shal Gilgulei HaNeshamos. These are the orders, the proper pattern. I'm not sure what order means here, but we'll try to find out. Hasadim Shal Gilgulei HaNeshamos. Shem Dinim de Nishpasim, which are the dinim on the neshama of the person. That is judged every single neshama when it leaves this world, actually during while you're here in this world. Akol chad v'chad the kabel onshe, in order to be able to receive the punishment that it needs. Now, what is this about? The dinim and the punishments shel haneshamos shedidonos kol achad v'achad bechem, that each one of the neshamos, the dinim and the punishments over there, that every soul is judged by, l'kabel onsham, in order to be able to receive the kind of punishment, besod hagilgul of this, in the secret of reincarnation, al seder hanachon, in the proper way, hamagia l'kol achas k'fi cheto kedei lihizdokech. And he translates, it's according to the order, the proper order that reaches the neshama, each and every single one of them. And what is that? That is the onish that he's talking about, is according to Kfi Chata, how much he sinned, what sins the Kedei Elahas Dakoch. And the idea of this is to be able to refine that. Possession cause of Eloh HaMishpatim, and this is what the Pasuk says, these are the judgments. Asher Tasin Levenechem, you should have this in mind as you go forward in life. Ritzon L'Olam HaKodesh Baruch Hu Omer LaMoshe, he says, the Mola Eloh HaSodos Shel HaGilgulim, these are the secrets of the Gilgulim. That you should organize and you should start sending them over to the Bnei Yisrael. Now, because of a Ramak, now the Ramak is Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, who was the Rosh Hashiva in Tzfat after the expulsion from Spain. But the great Kabbalists somehow made their way across the Mediterranean to Eretz Yisrael and came to Tzfat. Have you ever been to Tzfat? Tzfat's on, it's like a top of a mountain. But leading from Tzfat, going in straight direction north, you're going to come to Lebanon, which is also mountainous. So it's like a mountainous road. And it was a trading center at one time. Even though it's way up above Tiberia, it's like, 3,000 feet above that. He says, so the cause of a Ramak, Kodim Sheniknas Babir B'Maimrazu. So he said, before we get into this, let me talk. The Ramak wants to say this. Rosh Nifresh Ma Inyan Zecha Hanikra Gilgul. What is this Gilgul? Da Shaha Gilgul hu al beis panim. There's two ways you could look at the Gilgul. Ha'echad, shehem tzaddik, shuhu tzaddik. So that the neshama itself is the neshama of a tzaddik. It led the person in the best possible path. V'hutzrach lachashlim eze inyan, and there the neshama comes back into a physical body in order to complete a certain inyan, b'shleimus nefesh, in order to complete the work of the person's soul. Ve'ein nefesh ha'tzadik hazeh is galgal ela b'makom batuach. And this nefesh of the tzaddik, now he's using the word nefesh and the word neshama. They're two different aspects of light within inside of the soul of a person. So he's using them interchangeably. So let's see how it works out. Hazeb is galgal ela b'makom batuach. So that person or that neshama will only come back into a body, but in a place that is trusted, a place you can count on. Sheyoil v'lo yazik, that it will only help the person achieve his shleimus and not hurt him. Amnam kasher hirshia pam rishona, so that we see after this, once a person makes a mistake, the first time a person makes a mistake, v'chutzrak the saking v'shabal l'zeh ha'olam, and so the person has to make a tikkun in that mistake that he made when he was previously, I think, in this world. He comes back. V'shava l'zeh ha'olam, he comes back into this world. In hetiva harei tov. So let's suppose a person, what's the right word in English? He says, makes better his life. He says, hey, metiva. He said, that's good. So that person, in other words, he corrects the mistake that he made. V'im harashia pam shenis, and if he says something bad a second time, lo mifnei zera ta'aved nefesh, it's not because of this that he would lose his soul. Now, what it means to lose your soul, I really don't understand either. I don't understand souls that well. So he says to lose it, but you could be lost. In other words, it would not function in any way. So anyway, elatis galgal. Achre moso, after the person dies, that soul will come back, be reincarnated, beguf sheni, in a second body. V'chein beguf shlishi, also when you come to a third body, may go over 3 times, ad titahir, until adeh titahir, until the point at which that soul is purified. So, v'dah ki hagilgul hu onesh kasha, but he wants us to know that it is a terrible terrible punishment for a person, for a soul. The nefesh, but call on shem sheba'olam. It's worse than any punishment. He's talking about getting sick, and he's talking about accidents. He's talking about things happening to your family, all different kinds of things. He says that a gilgul is worse. V'gehenim enu kasha kamohu. Even going to Gehenim is not as hard as being reincarnated. Mitam ki hagehenim, who rechitzas nefesh be'esh, is washing the embarrassment of your sins in fire. In other places I've seen that it says, what's the fire? The fire is embarrassment. And that embarrassment will leave a person to be tahor and clean. The Gan Eden, after that soul will go into Gan Eden, it means the walls of the tzaddikim, in other words, the places where they dwell. But it comes out that the gilgul is very hard for the soul. It's like a story of a man. He went through all different kinds of changes and difficulties. Shanim rabos, for many years. And he takes his merchandise to a distant place. It's like buy cheap over here and sell for good money over there. That's the way to get rich. To make a profit over there. So he comes to the gate of the city that he's been traveling to. Amalo ishoita, are you crazy? Tevin atach la Afria. Apparently Afria is a place that's got plenty of straw. In other words, you're bringing something they don't need. There used to be a phrase, coals to Newcastle, which was apparently they had a lot of coal there. Ein Sochora Shava Klum, your Sochora is not worth anything at all over here. It's not valuable. Then this poor man is trying to sell his things. That person will have to Lachzar Pam Sheni, he's going to have to go back a second time. Mahala Kamashanim, and so he's going to have to go back on his way and find somewhere else. Biyadayim Rekonios Uma Ein Biyado, that at the end of the person's life, and all the tircha he did, that he went to this place and he went to that place, he tried to sell it here, sometimes it worked good, sometimes it didn't, but at the end he winds up with Ma'uma Ein Biyado, he has nothing in his hand. Ad Shuvuch al Makom, until he finally comes back to the place he started. V'yachsa v'yavicha b'min hanamar lo, and he goes back and he's going to bring this same merchandise that we said about him. V'shama meroche kaderech. So now he's back trying it again to get ultimately to make his life work out. He forgets though. He forgets the way. Because forgetfulness is very easily found in this world. So v'zecha b'derek nefesh mamash b'dinecho lo pachos v'lo yosa. So this is really the way that it is for a soul. When the man or woman is passed away from the world, and now they're sitting, and there's nothing they can do about it in the ground. And all of these things are passing by. All the things that they did are now apparent to them because we have an imagination and nobody imagines that they're doing something bad. Everybody thinks of what he's doing, what he needs to do, he or she needs to do, and they have to do it, they have to do this. They think they're righteous. That's the way people are. Even if we're doing something that's against the Torah, but we have different ways. They do blah, 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 blah. So this is exactly how it goes. That this nefesh comes into this world, and you have 70 years to be here in this world. And he struggles, works, toils, with all the things that he needs to do, and then he winds up going to the house, so let's say he says of eternity. In other words, he's gone. And the Pesach on turn him back. And you can't get in unless you have this or that. So and the nefesh is pushed away, can't get into Gan Eden because it's lacking whatever it lacks, and it comes back into this world. It would be better if he got the punishment of Gehenna. After that he could become, as we said, wash his soul in fire. After that he should be able to go up El Pnei HaMelech, to the face of the king. In other words, to greet the king and get into heaven. So Pnei HaMelech Avi Velotis Galgul Pam Shenis, and that's what it would be. So I'm not sure that Avi were Kach the Tacher V'Ta'alo El Pnei HaMelech Aviho Velo Tizgagul Pam Shenis, and not have to come back into the world a second time. Ki yesh shikachas hayetzahara, because what it is, the nature of the yechahar, there's shikacha there. We forget things. Hamashkiach la'adam al ma'bo. So he says that it causes a person to forget ma'bo, what he's going to. I think that's what the v'yitrach od shvim shana. So the person has to come back into this world, spend another 70 years going through all the travails that life has in this world. And he's not really trusting in the fear that he would have of the punishments that he might. He came believe suffix. So if that is a person like that, he doesn't pay attention to his Yetzer Hara and just keeps going along his way, Kain beli safek onish gilgul gadol ma'onish gehenim. And in this way, having to come back and repeat this life is a punishment, a gilgul gadol ma'onish gehenim, for the punishment of Gehenim. It's much worse. So now we're going to see if we can get a little bit more out of this. Maska Rebbe Shimon the Parashat Pesukim. So now these Pesukim. V'amar tikna eved ivri. This is how it starts out. You acquire for yourself a Jewish slave. Sheshana mi'avod. 6 years should he serve that slave. Of Shaviz Yetzer l'chavshi chinam, and on the 7th year he's going to go out free, owing nothing. Now I'm not sure what chinam means yet. V'hiktim v'amad to the Mediv. So Rebbe Shimon, he said this preface. Chaverim, Eden hochel legalo kama rosin timirin de gilgul. He says, Adach b'shah sharanachnu lonim elu ha'pesukim. So now, when we're learning these particular pesukim that he's going through here now, he ha'es ha'roi legalos kama sodas nistarim shala gilgul hanir mazim kan. So now we want to talk about these secrets of the Gilgulim. V'amaki masha kasav ki tikna eved ivri, that particular phrase, sheish shanam avod, pasuk zecha memayri, what's it talking about? Kad nishbasecha is chayves begilgula, when there's a neshama who is going to have to come back again, because neshama b'shal adam is chayvecha begilgul, ayidecha havono she'asa b'chayev, because of the sins that a person did during his lifetime. And two things have to be rebuilt, and we're about to get into explaining this. And he says, V'amar ki'im hi mesiter dahahu evet im neshama zu, if this neshama comes on the side of the slave, hahusha ba'olam. So let me come back again. A little choke there, and I kind of messed it up. In the shamazuchi mitzad eved hahu shaba'olam hayitzira shehu malach matat. Now we don't pronounce the whole name, just really the matat part. Some people say just the memtas part. So at any rate, if the person comes in as a slave, who is the slave? Sheba Olam Yetzira, Shuhu Malach Matat, is the slave of Olam Yetzira, which is the Olam of mostly of Malachim. HaNikra Eved Ivri, and this Matat is an angel. It's a channel. It's the main channel of Olam Yetzira, of the light of the Ein Sof coming down towards us. So he says he's also called a slave, a Hebrew slave, the Malchus, the Tzilus, and he's a slave or enslaved to a Tzilus, which part? The lowest part, which is the Malchus of the Tzilus. Dihi kolach of a shis citron, shehu kol shisha kitzvos, but it has within it 6 different parts. Shehim klalos olam yetzira, which are the klalos olam yetzira. Now, olam yetzira refers also to Zer Anpin and Tiferes. And Zer Anpin and Tiferes are 6 spheros. Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, and that's a Hod Yesod. V'lefi shehu b'china zah, and since it's the same thing as the b'china zah, that is a kol vok, which has the vok kitzvos, which I just mentioned. So the neshama that we're talking about, I'm not sure which neshama he's talking about, but let's go on. He says, This is talking about a yichud that takes place during the weekday. Why? Because during the weekday, that's where the neshama is going to come from, the olamos of bri, yitzir, and asiyah. Ksiv Bey, it's written in regards to that, ben neshama kazu. 6 years you should serve. In other words, serve means you'll be a slave 6 years. And what does that actually mean? Rotza Lomar, Hizacha Gilgula de law, Gilgulim Shehi tzricha his galgul kadei the sakan the benoitzev, that there are gilgulim, that a person has to come back into the world and back into the world and back into the world in order to be able to misaken his sins. Avonoseho. Avonoseho, yeah. Lo mischayvach of elishishnin, but that only takes place during the course of the 6 years. In other words, he's only enslaved for 6 years. And what does it mean? Only 6 times does he have to come back. You have to go back and forth up to the time of six times. Ad the ashlimas shesh dargim mahahu aser the is natila the is natilas. So he said, Mishalemes, until that soul is able to complete, a Misakenes, Sheish Mamadregos, the 6 different levels, Shall Osachamakom, Shall Nilkohom, Benekpasachabisham, from that place that the person is carved out of. Now, this is a conversation a different way. It's a learning about the fact that the word carving out goes together with the soul. So there's a place, obviously, where the souls are deposited and they have to be taken out of there. He calls upon the name Nechbetza. So Nechbetza, which means carving out, Misham. The Shehem Hechelo Shal Olam HaYetzira, which are the palaces of Olam HaYetzira. Sod Shesh Spheres Chagatnai. It's the secret of the 6 spheres, which are Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, and that's Achod and Yesod. So he said, Ki Chesed mislavish behechel av. So he goes a little more deeper. He says there's a hechel, there's a palace there called the Hechel Av, and that's where you find Chesed. Gevurah mislaveshes behechel hatzchos. Tiferes mislaveshes behechel haratza. Netza mislavish behechel noga. Who mislavish behechel etzem hashemayim, and so that is an etzem hashemayim, and Yesod mislavish behechel livnus asaper, and so we have this also said about this, that it refers also to Malchus, or Malchus the Chlala's book. This is Yesod and Malchus in the same place. Those are the 6 hechelos. There are also 6 steps. It's different things about it. Because in these vak places, that's Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, and that's also known as Chagatnai. He says, Mushrashos call him mitzvahs. All the mitzvahs are rooted in these 6 spheres. Ki mitzvahs aseh besod hayomim ein bechesed. So positive commandments are in chesed. Mitzvahs lo saseh besod small, which is the secret of the left line, hein begevurah. And the Tiferes, hu ha-Torah kula, is the entire Torah. V'nahi heim Tanakh, v'chakasim v'daber im haguf omerlo, so v'chakasim v'daber im haguf. So the kasav is really talking about with the body, v'omerlo, and it says to him, ki tikna achas, ki tikna ata haguf, when you buy the body, Eved Ivri, that is this male slave, this Jewish slave. Hainu neshama ma'olam yitzira, that we're talking about the Hebrew slave is talking about a neshama that comes from the olam yitzira. The malach of that is Matok, which we mentioned before, and Nekra Eved, who's also called by that name. Sheish shanim ya'avod, he can work for you 6 years. Neshama zu yechola his goggles. So this neshama can be reincarnated 6 pamim, 6 different times. In lo zochla the histakim b'pam rishona. So that's if the tikkun doesn't place the first time that the person is gagel. But tzrich la'avor she'ivud malacha v'yisurim v'choloyim v'dalos v'tilto. So talking about this, the tzrich la'avor, the person has to pass in the shivud malacha, the shivud enslaving of working here, v'yisurim and all of the pains, v'choloyim and the sicknesses, the dollars and the poverty, the tiltal. I'm not sure what tiltal means here. Tiltal means moving around. The taraf and being torn up and really beaten up in this world, in order to be able to come back and make a tikkun in its avonos. So now you see that you have stories in the Gemara where it talks about some man was just not worth anything his whole life long, except at the very end of his life, he understood the purity and the truth of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu. That person gets into the next world. Why is that? So he says, but let's say the person, the Shama, is coming from the level of the Shechina. Dihu Shvihis, which is the seventh, which is Malchus. Now what does he mean by that? Elohim Anashama Nechbetzecha Betzad Shechina, if it was carved out of the house of the Neshamos, Betzad Shechina, Shehi Sfiris Hashvihi Mahazat Atzilus, so now you're talking about Atzilus, and it's the seventh Sphira of the Chesed Gevurah Tiferes, Netzach Hod Yesod U'Malchus of the Olam of Atzilus. Sheneshama Kazu Nimshechas Al Yedei Zivug Shene'asa B'Leil Shabbos. So this neshama, it flows down as a result of the fact that there's a yichud Nimshach Al Yedei B'Zivug Shene'asa B'Leil Shabbos. When a person, how does a person merit? And this is one of the things in the Torah you see that religious people try to have their living together, husband and wife, on Shabbos night. The Kabbalists said better after midnight. So this would be the ideal time. And that would be produced, this kind of neshama, he says, that's really coming out of the olam of the Shechina. Vadai Ma'akasiv, so for sure it's written like this, b'neshama kazu, with a neshama like this. V'shviz, on the seventh, that's the idea of the seventh year that's going to go free. Pirush Adam Kazeh Shnishmasach Machashchina, whose real soul, the depth of his soul from the Shechina, Sheshaviz, which is the seventh. Aki Harbe Lipshoa, V'hoya Ru'oy L'Kabel Onesh Ayadei Gilgul Shal Shiva Malacha B'Zecha Oilam. Afki Harbe Lipshoa, if the person does a lot of bad things, even though the neshama comes from a very high place, V'hoya Roy L'Kabel Onesh, and he really should be punished, Al Yedecha B'Gilgul Shal Shivut, but through the reincarnation of become a slave again. B'Shiva Malacha B'Zecha Oilam, in other words, be indentured to the fact that you have to make a living in this world, and somehow you have to survive it. But even so, the person goes out owes nothing. And I'm not sure what chinam means. We'll see if she goes out free. Chinam. Pirush. Lo yishta'aved begilgulo. That person is not going to be enslaved in a gilgul again. So notice how the concept of slavery and gilgul go together. Fatam Adavar, and the reason for this, that Tzaddik Vadai lays bei malacha, the Tzaddik himself really doesn't have a malacha. What does that mean? Ki hasod hanikra Tzaddik. So let's go back to this. The Yisod is called Tzaddik. Vadai ein b'chol malachas b'chasacha b'bara shal neshamas. It for certainly ein lo malachas. He has no one to bara shal neshamas. He doesn't have to go through the process of being mavarer his neshama. Ki hu mamshek neshamas chadashos, because he's in charge, or he brings out neshamas chadashos, mimakrach on neshamas from the fountain of neshamas v'locha b'makam mabara, but not from the place that is being refined out. What does that mean? So somehow it's like a new neshama, and it's not one that is coming from the birurim. So it's coming from the top place, it's coming from the top to the bottom. Kaven the lis bein malacha lis bein shivut. For kaven shuhu ba'olam atzilus. So this neshama is from the olam atzilus. She'ein bochom b'lechas habara, where the light is pure by itself, does not have to be refined anymore. So therefore the person will not be indentured two false ideas, the klipos, ki heim einem yocholos le'echos bo klal, because they are not able to hold on to him at all, they grab a hold of him at all. So they're a neshama that comes from that place. Itnar Ba, it says in regard to that, that the neshama that comes from this place, that is actually carved out, is the chelik of the shechina of Olam Atzilus. Hakabel the Shamas Chadashos Yisod, which is now receiving the Shamas Chadashos from the Yisod. Ne'amar Ba, it's said in regard to the Shabbos Shaviz Yetzi L'chash V'chinon, they should go out on the seventh day, chafshei, free, chinon, owning nothing. Pirush, Leis Bel She'ibud, it does have a fact that becomes indentured. Ein Bel Shiva Malacha, but it's not Kalal. It doesn't have the Shiva, the Malacha at all. Ela Tistakein B'masha Osik B'Torah B'mitzvahs, but instead of going through Gilgal, this neshama will have to do a lot of Torah and mitzvahs. That's the way he ends up here in the Matok Midvash, and we'll continue on next time.